Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. I think we are on live. Um, so, what I need from my folks from Facebook, if you can see me, I want you to say hello. Hello, hello, hello. If you can see me on live, say hello. Let's see. Post it and share it with others. Okay. I see Miranda is on, and Miranda just said hello, Auntie. So that means we're on live. We're on. We're ready to get going. Do I sound okay, Miranda? Thank you so much for joining. It's always hard to know who's watching and who's not watching. So I can see your comments. So that means you're here. Let's wait to see if we get anybody else to join us tonight, and then we'll get going. So, if you are here because we are having some live conversations about the book, Does God See Me? Okay, Does God See Me? And that is my first book written by me, and I've been having conversations with different guests about the book. Tonight, I'm having a conversation with my sister in love, Cherisna, who will join me live tonight. We have a few people on Instagram. I think tonight is the first night I was able to get Instagram going and Facebook and YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, hello. If you're on Facebook, hello. I can see your comments. So thank you for being here. If you're on Instagram, hello, hello. I can see your comments as well. Thank you all so much for being here. This book is a project of my heart. I believe God developed this project in me years upon years ago. And I've been sitting with it, writing notes down for maybe a decade now, since I was doing prison ministry, traveled around the world, and I just kept taking notes and notes. And with that, I wanted to write a book that really spoke the stories of women around the world, stories of trauma and our healing. And I also wanted to create a resource for people without access because therapy costs, healing costs. And so I wanted to create a resource. Now, the resource has a whole lot of women's stories from the Bible, my story, and other women's stories from around the world. But this book is for everyone. Last week's guest, Ben, a man you would not think I had anything in common with. But he sat here and graced us with his presence, and he shared about how the book ministered to him. So I believe that this book will minister to women. My audience is really women, but it works for men as well because men needs healing as well. So tonight, without any further ado, I'm going to bring my sister in love, Cherisna, to the stage to share with us tonight about the book. So let me see if I can read some of the comments before you go on, Cherisna, and see if there's any comments online the book. Okay, Cherisna was just here a second ago, and something happened. I don't know if she got a call or something happened. There she is, and she you went black for a second, and I was getting worried. So you're back though. And so what I want to do tonight is really to dive in regarding this conversation. Does God see me? I'm watching all the lives to see if there's any comments from our guests, from our viewers, about the book. If you have any questions for Cherisna, you can go on here and write down your questions. I will get your questions. And if you have any questions for me, you can write the questions as well. So let's get started. So, as I shared, tonight This conversation is with Cherisna Jean Marie. She is not only my sister in love, she's also a friend. She's been a friend since we were in youth group years upon years ago. We were in youth group together, and she's been a friend throughout the ministry journey. You know, to be a woman in ministry can be an isolating space. So she's been a ministry partner in many ways. Whatever jobs we have, we always invite each other to our space to hold space and to really create this fuller story and help us hold this fuller story that God is birthing inside of us. So tonight it's Cherisna's turn. So Cherisna, can you tell our guests just a little bit about you, who you are, and what you're doing currently, what projects you're working on, and then we'll dive into the book. How about that?
Hello, good evening. I hear an echo. Okay, don't hear that anymore. It is good to be here tonight. It's been a long day, but I tell you, I was anticipating this conversation. So I'm excited to be here tonight with you, my sister in love and in life and in ministry.
That's right.
We have shared so many journeys. We do share so many journeys, and I'm just grateful that God saw it necessary for our paths to cross in multiple ways. Because the truth is, you're my person. Um,
Mhm.
as it relates to life, Dilla is one of the first, if not the first person I often call to share anything that's happening in my life, whether social or rather whether professional. Your lived experience, your wisdom, the way you love and care for me and for people, just who you are, speaks volumes. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be part of your community, and I'm grateful to be in this season of your life as we collectively talk about and share this experience and push this very important book. I'm the Reverend
Yes.
Cherisna Jean Marie, I'm an ordained minister with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and also the founder of the Co-Conspirator Institute. I founded this nonprofit organization in 2022 in honor of my nephew, Christopher Alzi Morand, who was murdered due to gun violence in 2019. So this ministry, this nonprofit, is a way for me to keep saying his name. I borrow from the traditions that says when our loved ones pass on, each time we say their
That's
name, they
right.
live on. And so I say his name. I try to say his name every day because Christopher is forever with us. And grateful to be able to share his story and to stand in the gap for many of those, particularly mothers, Black mothers, who's lost their children due to gun violence.
Yes. Yes.
And as you know, Dirla, just recently, God called me back into traditional
I was
ministry.
about to say, you need to share about that.
Yes, I just got called, and actually, I'm a month in as the dean of the Disciples House, the Divinity House at Vanderbilt Divinity School. I'm an alum at Vanderbilt Divinity School, and we have partnerships with our denomination where we have houses where we offer scholarships and also housing and provide space for students who are pursuing a div degree, a master's of divinity, and even theology, those who feel called to the ministry. We provide resources and a space for them to fully develop as a minister. And I'm excited about this great work that I'm doing at the Divinity House there in Nashville, Tennessee.
All right, all right. So let me read some of the people that's already on the live. I see our family. Let me give a shout out to our family because you guys always support, and I really appreciate the support that our families share. give upon us. I think, if it wasn't for the family, sometimes we would not be thriving and doing the things that we are doing. So I just want to shout out to the family for supporting us as we're having this conversation. So, without any further ado, one of the things that people respond to the first with my book is the title.
Mhm.
Does God see me? So I want to hear some of your first reactions when you heard the title. What did it do to you emotionally and just spiritually? Like what were your thoughts when you first read the title?
Yeah, it's a provocative question.
Mhm.
And it's a question, but it really is a statement, right? It is one of those kinds of lament moments that really get at the face of God about your lived experience
Yeah.
as it relates to suffering, as it relates to heartbreak, as it relates to trauma. Immediately, when I was reading this book and thinking
Yeah.
about this title, what was coming up for me constantly was the color purple. And the color purple is sacred text for many of us Black women theologians, womanist theologians. Alice Walker does a phenomenal job telling the lived experience of Black women through the color purple. And it's a sacred text for me. And actually, it's the text that I used for my master's thesis. And what kept coming up for me, Zola, was Seeley.
Mm.
Seeley is having a conversation with Avery. And Avery asks Celie, and if you don't know The Color Purple, if you have not read The Color Purple, if you haven't seen the movie,
Right.
let me encourage you. It's something you need to experience, to see, to read. A great summer book, great summer read, even if you've read it. But Celie opens the book, or Alex Walker, the author of The Color Purple, July, she opens the book with Celie writing prayers to God, dear God, and she's writing her
Mhm.
experience. And midway through the book, Avery asks about Celie's conversations with God, and Celie tells Avery, I stopped talking to God
Mm.
because God don't listen to poor Black girls.
Mm.
And so the question, does God see me,
Mm.
places me in the garden with Celie and Avery having this conversation. It is a kind of spiritual, it's the spiritual discipline that we don't often lean into, the lament,
Right.
right? It
Right.
is it is a modern day lament for
Yeah.
those of
Yeah.
us who understand what suffering is, who have sit with
Girl, you
suffering for
preaching over
trauma.
here, okay? You preaching. I'm like, she get it.
Yeah, I
She,
get it.
she gets
Yes.
the
Right.
question.
This is our language, right? It
It's
is a question that speaks to the language of those who's been traumatized. It speaks
wow.
to the language of those who suffer. Does God see me? Is the kind of lament that we need to give people permission to experience. Um,
I love that you use the word permission because oftentimes in many church circles, we're told to not question God. We're told to not ask those questions because God is God and, just let God be God, which is true. While at the same time, when we're in a relationship with God, we do relational things,
that's right.
right? And asking questions is a relational thing,
Right.
you
It's not
know?
it's not just a relational thing, it's a reflection of our intimacy with God.
Right.
Right. And so another image for me as I was reading the book, reflecting on the title, was my mother. My
Hmm.
mother, who I often say, my dad taught me how to pray, but it was my mother who showed me who God was. She
Right.
showed me Imago Dei growing up. I have many stories of my mother showing me the image of God growing up. And my mother also have this particular theology. She just turned 83 last week, and she often would say growing up until this day, God is an adult and we don't question God. And so
Right.
she comes from a generation tradition and a
Mm-hmm.
theological perspective where she did not have, right, the experience, the permission, or even the theology or language to
Mm-hmm.
ask the question, does God see me? And I
Right.
think what this book does, what you are doing in this book with this very provocative question and title, is it's really moving us into a place theologically to expand not just our image with God, but our intimacy with God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is an intimate question, it is a provocative question and it is a necessary question. And if we're being honest, it's a question we have all asked at some point,
That's
right? Because to live is to experience some kind of pain or suffering,
right.
right?
Mhm.
To live is to engage with things not going the way you wanted to,
Mhm.
life not lifing the way you wanted to. There's loss, death, there's relationship issues, there's infertility issues, there's childlessness. I mean, there's all kinds of issues. To live is to know what pain is about. So that means this question is not just a me question.
That's right.
This question is an us question,
Yeah.
because you can't lament just alone. You have to lament in community. And
Yes.
so it's a question that we all can come around the circle and sit and say, my, this is
It's
my question too.
absolutely. It's a universal question. It's
Absolutely.
a question, regardless of your social location, what language you speak, where you come from, you can identify with this question. And I would even suggest, while many of us might have asked the question, I think there are some of us who can't ask the question because we just simply don't have language or permission, right?
Mhm.
And so many of us, we've been taught in a particular theological framework, a church culture that calls us to ignore our suffering,
Right.
that calls us to suggest, like my mom said, God is an adult and God does what God does and we don't question.
Right.
But I would suggest that we have learned, as we expand our understanding of God, as we expand even our cultural experience within the church, that God doesn't just invite us to ask question. It also is a form of intimacy. It draws us close. It's a reflection of who God is with us and who we are to God. Does God see me is a form of worship.
Yes, a form of worship. So before we go even deeper into the book, I want to say hello to all the people that are watching. Don't forget to pre-order the book. We are having conversations about this little book here. We're about to go deep, a little bit deeper into the book. Now we're going to share about the book, but we're not going to give all the gems away because you have to get it and read it yourself, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about the book without spoiling it for you, because there's some good things in there that I believe will help people, women, men, and the community on their journey and on their healing journeys as well. So for those of you that are here, welcome. Thank you. Stay for a while. Hey, Cynthia, Miranda's still here. Aileen, I see you. People on Instagram, I see y'all as well. Yes, and I'm reading your comments as well. So if you have questions, please post your questions in the comments so that we can answer some of your questions. So you've read some of the book, you've seen the gist of the book, Cherisna. What would you say grabbed you
Mhm.
beyond the title of the book? What grabbed you without spoiling it for people? Okay. Um, what grabbed you
Yeah.
instantly by the book?
So this is a very important book for the hour, for the season that we're in as a country, and I would even suggest as a world. And here's why. This book speaks or tells a beautiful story about the plight of the immigrant. And it humanizes the immigrant story.
Mm.
Oftentimes, particularly around immigration, it's so politicized that we don't have an opportunity to see the human experience or hear or learn or know the human experience. This book, it
Yeah.
is a beautiful story of an immigrant girl who is going through the woes of life and the various different cultural transitions and changes and trauma, heartbreak, disappointment at an early age.
Mm.
A young girl who has experienced far too much, far too young.
Mm. Here's a question I have for you.
Mhm.
So you grew up in a Haitian household. You've been around the immigrant story. You're second generation. Um, and you've seen, how do you engage with that girl that's coming from Haiti and you who was born in America?
Yeah. While I was reading the book, I was literally like it was a comparison to, because remember, we knew each other at some point,
Right, right.
right? And so when you were describing your early years here in this country, we were in relationship and in community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was literally comparing my lived experience with yours.
Mm.
And while your immigrant story is a very common and familiar story, it is not my story. It is some of my siblings, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm always fascinated when I talk to my elders. I had a fascinating conversation with my oldest brother, Lookner, a few years ago about his story of bullying when he was in high school. And it
Mm.
was so different from me.
Right,
And
right.
it changed my perspective and viewpoint of how I judged him about certain decisions he made, right? In his location, if I'll be honest, with Black Americans. And
Mm.
so I was comparing my experience with yours, and I was remembering our time, right, together as teenagers, and
Yeah.
was moved by your story because while it wasn't my story, I can identify in some ways. But I also was moved by the injustice,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
trauma that you experienced at such a young age.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is the proper question to ask.
You
Does
know,
God see me?
one of the things you shared that struck me is that although we were in those younger formative years, although we were in the same youth group, we were engaged in some similar activities. You didn't know what I was going through,
No.
you know. And that's the thing, that's the interesting thing about trauma, is that someone might be going through trauma and pain and suffering and you would never know. And the immigrants especially, we're taught to not complain, you know, when there's pain and suffering. We're taught to just take it and like a champ. Even if you're a child, you know, we're taught to just kind of hold it and just let it be, because that's how life is. So someone next to you could be suffering, could be going without clothes, could be hungry, could be dealing with, you know, immigration issues or prison or homelessness and all this stuff, and you, or getting beat in their homes, you know, domestic violence and all kinds of stuff may be happening and you would never know.
Jilla, I was thinking about the particular story you told about your high school and what happened to you coming home. And I thought, this is a girl who I gravitated towards you there in the church because you laughed, the way you laughed. You
Mhm,
always
mhm.
had a laugh. You were so joyful. And I was shocked to read about the trauma you went through during high school, to the point
Mm.
while I was reading, I had to pause and to go to my memory bank to think, did I know her? And we knew each other, right?
Mhm.
And if
Mhm.
I would have never, I learned so much about you reading this
Yeah.
book. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate you sharing that we can off trauma can be a lonely journey. We can
Mhm.
go through some
Mhm.
of the most horrific experiences and go through it alone and still be in community,
Yeah. Well,
still
that's
be
the
in community,
thing.
and no one knows
No one will
that you
know. No one will know.
unless
That's
you
the
tell them.
thing, that I'm always mindful of. When you see someone and their presence, or whether they're quiet or they're not talking, or whatever the case may be, you have no idea what that person is going through, you know?
I would even suggest, and this was my experience with you in our formative years, you can see someone laughing and being the life of the party, right? Someone who could be at the center. I mean, you were the big alto, the big personality in the
Mhm.
choir. You
Mhm.
were my August, sister. You were the young lady that my brother had the big crush on, and he was
Mhm.
bugging me to
Mhm.
introduce y'all and to hook y'all up, right? You were that girl.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you were also going through bullying and trauma and abandonment. And I never, ever knew.
It's funny you said that I was the loud personality, because, and I was a laugher. You didn't say loud personality, but in our family, to deal with some of the stuff that we've had to go through, we laughed, we joked. I
Mm,
mean, you can ask every last one of my sisters, and
wow.
if Sonny were alive, he would say the same thing. We laughed. Comedy was our way of making it
Hoping.
through,
It was hoping. Yeah.
comedy was our way of
Right.
just dealing with life. So we laughed about everything. Even now, we can always spin the narrative
Yeah.
with a joke, with a laughter,
And so,
everything, we kept everything light.
right. And so here's why I love this book and encourage those who are watching, if you haven't already, to order this book. This book also, so it humanizes Jirla, the immigrant story. So if you don't know the story of the immigrant and you want to know, this is a beautiful book to hear, or to read, to learn. But let me tell you what else it does. It teaches us about trauma.
Mm,
The way you're a beautiful writer, you're a beautiful storyteller, and I love the way you
thank
help
you.
us to experience trauma with you. The way you
Mm,
describe it through your storytelling, the way you name it, right? The way you locate it in your experiences, and you help us to see it even in our theology, right?
mhm.
It is a great book. We use the word trauma, we say trauma, but many of us, including I, don't fully understand the depths of
Mhm.
trauma. And it's these kinds of books that invites us in through storytelling that help us to get an experience with trauma so that we're more aware.
Right,
This
right.
book is really doing that particular work that I think we definitely need in this hour.
When someone asked me why did I write this book, and I said I wanted to write a book that my 15-year-old self
Mm,
w- could have used in those years. I wanted to write the book for me, so I'm the first audience of my book,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because I wanted to write the book for me,
yeah.
for my own healing and for my own um self-preservation and all of that. Cynthia is Cynthia, I don't know your full title, but I know you teach psychology, and I am not sure if you're doing therapy at this present moment, but she made a comment and she said, locate trauma in our theology. This is a whole sermon, she said.
Mm,
Now, I want to segue into that comment that Cynthia just made, because there's a whole other woman that this book centers around. and
Mhm.
that is a woman found in Genesis 16
Mhm.
by the name of Hagar.
Mhm.
And when I was, okay, Cynthia is a clinical and community psychologist and professor, and she's Haitian, and she's in the Chicago area. So I had to give all your information, just so we know that when it's
Okay.
time for us to get in these forums, there's more than just me out here. There's my girl Cynthia that can help us get delivered from some of these things that we're talking about as well. So thank you so much for being here, Cynthia. Yes, yes. So Hagar. Hey, Whistling is online. Okay, thank you for being
Mhm.
here, Whistling. So when I started thinking about the title for this book, my editor challenged me and said, because the first title was God is the God that sees me.
Mm.
And my editor says, that title has been done. Many people have written about it already. I want you to think of a title,
Mm.
of another title. And so I sat and messaged a couple of people. And I'm like, and I sat with the character of Hagar because there's a whole bunch of Hagar in this book as well, right? And I sat with Hagar and I'm like, well, Hagar, what question did you have of God for you to proclaim and exclaim that God is a God that sees you in Genesis 16? What question did you have? Was there at one point you did not think that God saw you?
Yeah.
Was there at one point you did not feel seen by God for you to be in shock when God actually shows up and you say, God is a God that sees me? So there's a whole other woman behind this book here. So what did you think of what do you think of the character of Hagar? Hey
Yeah.
Ruth, we see you.
Yeah. So, what I appreciate about this book, and I'm looking down because I'm trying to, what escapes me is Phyllis Wheatley's, she has a book on trauma, and I can't think of the name of it, but it'll come to me as we talk. But you know what's interesting about this book is you get a little theology, you get some trauma informed work, you get storytelling. Hagar's um, a complicated character in the text. And perhaps I would say it this way: the way we often have been taught to read Hagar
Mm-hmm.
is a complicated text. And the truth is, it's taking Black women to reinterpret Hagar in a
Mm-hmm.
way in order for us to show compassion to Hagar, right? In order for us
Right.
to even locate our own stories and lived experiences. Hagar is our ancestors,
Right.
Black women's ancestors, right? And so she tells the story of the enslaved Black woman
Right.
who experience sexual abuse, who
Mm-hmm.
experience wet nurse, who experience the plight of a silent and quiet God,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I appreciated what you did with Agar and even intertwining Hagar's story with yours, because Hagar's story needs redemption. It needs to
Absolutely.
continue to be redeemed, and I think Black women theologians are often doing that
Yeah.
in many ways. So I appreciate what you did with Hagar's story.
Yeah.
Hagar and so many others in the Bible is a story of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The story of trauma. That's what I love what you did with Hagar, because what you did with her was you reinterpret and told her story through the lens of trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's one that we can often again identify with
Right. Right. Yeah.
in the book.
It's crazy what we do with Hagar in the church because there's at the one on the one hand, we love using her words. We love co-opting what she shares about God, that God is a God that sees. I mean, everywhere I've gone, I've seen people quoting Hagar and saying this and that about Hagar, but at the same breath, they believe that Hagar deserved to be abused. And I'm like, please make it make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Make it make sense that a woman that was basically human trafficked, a woman that had no autonomy, no voice, no nothing, right? That a woman who did not have any rights, all of the sudden, when if because the Bible said Hagar became indignant or talked back or something like that, right? And that one line tells us that Hagar deserved to be abused. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. Something's off here. Something is not good. There's a misalignment
Yeah.
here that we need to rework
Yeah.
the story of Hagar. We need to rework what we have done with Hagar throughout the Bible, throughout
Right.
church tradition, right?
Right.
And so in this book, I wanted to redeem Hagar's story. I
Yeah.
wanted to bring her back. I wanted us to feel soft. I wanted us to feel tender for her story. I wanted us to feel sad for her. I
Yeah.
wanted us to cry, weep over Hagar's plight and
Yeah.
what she's been through. So that was my hope in intertwining her story with my story, but also elevating Hagar's story as
Yeah.
the mother who named God and who
Mhm.
survived the worst of the atrocities that she's
Yeah.
been dealt,
Yeah.
right?
I think part of it is in terms of what we do with Hagar, but not just Hagar. I think it's just a particular theology, right? It's a particular theological lens and practice. Is the truth is we don't know what to do with trauma. We don't know what to do with suffering. We don't know. It's the theodicy question. Why does good people suffer, right?
Mm-hmm.
We still don't know what to do with that question. And so what we've taught ourselves, what the cultural and theological lens that has socialized us is to elevate the ways God is elevated in Hagar's story and to ignore her suffering. And again, we've been taught to ignore suffering, right?
Right.
But to elevate a God. But the truth is, we the ways in which we fully experience God is through the full lived experience. And I think what the biblical text does is it gives us the full lived experiences of the human plight.
Right.
And Hagar absolutely is a pioneer of trauma stories. She
Mm-hmm.
is telling the modern day lived experiences of our ancestors, the enslaved Black woman, and how that story
Right.
still live in our DNA. Right. And so, in order for me to be able to worship Hagar's God, the one she names as God sees me, I have
Right.
to also be able to sit in Hagar's lived experience to fully grasp and fully appreciate and even to fully know the God that sees. And
Absolutely.
so I think
Absolutely.
what your book does, and even how you interpret Hagar and center Hagar in the biblical story, is you're inviting us to sit in our own trauma. You're
Yeah.
inviting us to be honest about our
Right.
suffering. You're inviting us to have a
Right.
spiritual discipline of asking the real questions about
Right.
the places we hurt and the places we are broken.
Right.
You're inviting us to a worship of lament.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
inviting your story. And I can't imagine, Jola, as I was reading your book, I was like, I wonder where your emotional state was retelling your story. Because reading it,
Mm.
I was moved. I
Right.
was
Right.
moved for a number of reasons. I was moved because I know you personally, your family, but I was also moved because I knew you. And so I
Mm.
literally was
Yeah.
taking myself physically back. It was almost like a time machine that was happening in my mind when was
Yeah.
reading the book. I was able to locate you because I know I know the high school. I know where it's located. So I was literally
Right. Right.
going, right. I know South Stuyvesant Avenue where you were walking. I just
Right.
know these spaces. And so it's almost like a machine
Yeah.
walking with
Yeah.
you as you were writing this story. And I was having visceral reactions to
Mm.
the story that you were sharing because I know you, but
Yeah. Yeah.
also it's time for us to tell the truth about the fullness of our story and
Yeah.
not just the places where we can celebrate.
Right. Right.
And so when I talk about my work at the Co-Conspirator Institute,
Yeah.
we talk about the sitting in Saturday practice that I have with my moms who
Yeah.
comes to our retreat and invite right our moms to sitting in Saturday is the analogy of Easter Saturday, right?
Yeah.
The church socially, we know what to do with Good Friday, Jesus is dead. And we are
Yeah.
experts at Sunday's resurrection. We
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
to do on Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
But the church needs to learn how to sit in Saturday, Easter Saturday. It
Well,
is
there's something you shared about we don't know what to do with trauma. I think we always look at pain and suffering as the only way that God can offer meaning into our lives. Like that's the only thing that God can use to humble us, to make us, be, get the message, get the picture. I'm like, pain and suffering is not our friend.
mhm,
Pain and suffering is not our destiny. This pain and suffering is not how it was supposed to be. And so the Christian world, we have too much of a like a kinship to pain and suffering. Like we love it a little too much,
mhm.
that we would just continue to raise it up. I suffered XYZ, praise be to God. I'm like, pain and suffering happens,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to celebrate it
Mhm.
as if it's the only thing that God can use to redeem me,
Yeah. It's
to
a
provide
dangerous
meaning
theology.
in my life.
And
Yeah,
it's a dangerous theology.
it is.
And I think it's also a lazy theology, quite frankly, because what we're trying to do with that particular lens and perspective is trying to answer the mystery of why do
Why does
bad
pain
things
exist?
happen to good
Hmm.
people? It's the theodicy question, and I find it to be what I call holy mystery. They're just
That's exactly
sacred
right.
mysteries about our journey as human beings and our journey in relationship with God that we'll never fully know and understand until we get the glory,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And
And
so
for that nuance to just be.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say, and we have to live in the living in that nuance calls us to be mature Christians,
Right.
right? Oftentimes the church develop a a self-esteem issue. It's almost bullying in some ways where Christians have to be right about everything. We have to
Hmm.
be right. We have to know it all. We have to know, and
We have to have
here's
all
the
the right
way. We have
answers.
all the right answers, and Jesus is the only way and the way, and we have to be right. And it becomes a kind of uh, um, almost glorifying your own self because of the theology. It's you become bigger than other people, and
Right.
it doesn't leave room for you to live in a world in diversity. It
That's
doesn't
right.
leave room for you to be in community and in relationship with
Right.
people who sees and experience the world differently. I
Right.
remember a while back a minister telling me that because I'm a Christian, I couldn't be friends with someone who don't believe like me because they couldn't pray for me. And I just thought, how small of a world is that? In a
Right.
world where God, the world, in the fullness of the world, it belongs to God, and God created it all. You're telling me that I'm narrowed in the lived experiences and of people just through my Christian experience.
Right.
Where's my
Right.
truth? My truth
Yeah.
is this: God is revealed to me through Jesus Christ, and Christian is the way in which I understand and move in the world. That is
Right.
how God has chosen to reveal God's self to me.
Right.
But I
Right.
am not narrow. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't need God to only be a God of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Because for those that are watching, I don't mean to scare you, but the Jesus we worship was not a Christian. He was a Jew. And even our own Christian text says salvation come from the Jews. That is a interfaith, right? That is an
Mm-hmm.
interfaith
Mm-hmm.
claim in our text. And so I think what happens with these kinds of stories, and that's why I started again with why this book is necessary today, is
Right.
because you're sharing and you're humanizing the immigrant story. And the immigrant story is the story of those who come from the world, the universal world that comes
Right.
with different language and different culture and different ways of being, different ways you pray, and even different ways you worship.
Right.
And that
Right.
does God see me is a universal question and language that I think we all can identify with,
Absolutely.
regardless
Absolutely.
of our differences, and
Yeah.
being able to be in community with those who suffer and to introduce the hope that is present in your story, that is present in this book,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
present in the world, is one that we need today.
I have one more question for you. Before I ask this last question, I want to say hello to people that are watching. I see Gaytan came on. Ruth, thank you for your comments, Ruth. Ruth shared, I like how you end each chapter with giving us an opportunity to self-reflect and process. Very good read and therapy. You're an awesome. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And Dominique is here. Great conversations on pain and suffering. So thank you all. And people on Instagram, I see you, Katrina, PJ. Hi, Mike. I see you. Kristen was on there. Tiana, I see you. Thank you all so much. And I see you as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Katrina, I see you all as well. Thank you all so much for watching. I have one more question for the Reverend Cherisna, and that is the question of the book. Does God see me? Does God see us?
Mhm.
What do you say about what's the answer?
Yeah. Not only does God see us, but God is forever present with us.
Mm,
And even when we don't feel God or hear God or see the move of God, it does not mean God is not present. I
mm,
know of a God that's omnipresent, that's always here and is everywhere. And it's not limited by what I go through, it's not limited by what I feel, it's not even limited by what I know. Not
mm-hmm.
only does God see me, but not only does God see you, God is forever present with us.
And that's a word. That's a word. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for our guest, Cherisna. Um, I know I'm always singing your praises. You know, we're at the gala. I'm like, yeah, my sister Cherisna, she's not here with us, and I just value you and what God has done in your life and what God is doing in your life. and the expansive way how God has expanded your territory, even your theological imagination, even the way you speak of spirituality, going into spaces that are sometimes uncomfortable for us as Christians, for you to even dare ask those questions, right? And for you to be in those spaces. For our audience watching, it's not only okay to ask those questions and to wonder about those questions. I actually believe it's necessary
That's right.
to ask those questions that your body is already asking.
That's
Your
right.
body is already feeling those questions.
That's right.
So ask God those questions that just make you scratch your head a little bit and say, huh? This does not make sense to my human brain.
That's right.
And those questions, I believe, are what um, is the glue
That's right.
to the relationship we have with God. So that's my takeaway from this conversation
That's
tonight. Tomorrow night, we're going to have another guest, our last guest until the book fully launches.
Woohoo!
The book launch next Tuesday, May 7th. I would love for you to buy a copy. Now, I'm very I'm not shy, but you know how some people are very tender about something they produce, and so I want you to buy a book and buy one for another sister or brother that you know is in need. My purpose for writing the book was that therapy does not always do it for everyone. Not everyone has access. And the way we do therapy, I was in an interview last week and I was sharing about that therapy in the West is not the end all be all for people, because I believe Hagar received healing
That's right.
without necessary going through therapy. Now, I'm not saying don't go to therapy, but I'm thinking expansively about my
That's right.
sisters in Haiti and my sisters in
That's right.
Congo and my sisters in Kenya.
That's right.
These women will not be have access to Western therapy, right? And so for that reason, I wanted to write this book so they can have and engage with a book like this and be given permission to ask the question and enter the healing journey. So buy a book and get one for another sister or brother or people in your communities. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you. Any last words for
Yeah.
our
Well,
audience?
I would echo, get the book, buy the book, invite someone else, and don't read this book alone. As Ruth said in the comments, there are great reflection moments in the book after each chapter. So I want to encourage you not to read the book alone, to find you one or two girlfriends, one or two friends. This is a book, as you saw last week, it's not gendered. This is for everyone, male, female, and otherwise. Our siblings in Christ. This is an inclusive book. I invite you to get the book, buy it for someone else, and read it in community so that we can have tools and resources and even language to talk about
Absolutely.
our traumatic experiences so that we can heal, so that we can be free, so that we can be whole, and that we can
Absolutely.
experience abundant life.
Absolutely.
Get you a
Absolutely.
book.
I have put the link in the comments. I saw a couple of people asking how to buy it. You can purchase the book on Amazon. I will be doing a few book launch, book signing events. You can purchase a copy with me as well. But pre-order sales are very important. So pre-order your copy and thank you. I appreciate you.
And I want to donate. Someone who's watching who says, I love the book, but can't purchase it for whatever reason, please send us, either Dirla or myself, a note. I want to donate 5 books tonight for someone who needs a book. If you would reach out, contact me. Dirla, if I don't know how we can
I
do
hope
that.
y'all heard that.
5 books.
Leave
I
me
want
a
to donate.
comment.
Leave a comment and
Cherisna is a co-host of this live. So she'll read the comments as well. So if she will purchase 5 copies for someone in need. So let's do it.
And perhaps it's not you who's in need, but you know someone. I want to
Mm-hmm.
donate 5 books tonight. So please reach out to me, because this is a necessary book. And I
Thank
don't think
you.
your lack should prevent you from getting this book. Get this blessing, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. That's all we have for tonight. We gave you all our good gems. And so get the book and let's keep talking and let's keep asking the questions of God. Good night and
Good
thank
night.
you all.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
God bless you.